Hello there, and welcome to The Sleepy Scholar. Tonight's journey takes us back in time to the quiet corridors of memory, exploring the astonishing world of lost technologies. We travel into the workshops of artisans whose secrets vanished with them, and walk through the blueprints of marvels that history somehow left behind. These are not just tales of forgotten crafts, but of human ingenuity that once shone brightly before fading into the soft mists of time. Imagine a vast library where entire volumes of knowledge have gently dissolved, leaving behind only the fainter outlines of their genius, inviting us to wonder not just how they worked, but what it felt like to see them change the world. In our exploration, we will brush aside the dust from these forgotten achievements. We will listen for the echoes of steam engines that predate their time, and try to understand the resilient chemistry of materials we struggle to replicate even today. These lost arts are like slumbering giants, resting just beneath the surface of our modern understanding. They remind us that the path of progress is not always a straight line, but a winding river with tributaries that sometimes flow into quiet, hidden lakes, patiently waiting to be rediscovered. There is no urgency here, only a gentle unfolding of stories. If you enjoy these quiet explorations, consider subscribing so you can easily return here whenever you need to rest. For now, get comfortable. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let's begin. The Antikythera Mechanism is an ancient computer built by the Greeks over 2 millennia ago. Discovered in a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of a Greek island, the device initially appeared as a corroded lump of bronze, a mystery resting on the seafloor. It was only decades later, through careful X-ray tomography, that its true nature was revealed. This was not mere decoration, but a machine of breathtaking complexity, a clockwork mind of interlocking gears. This analog computer was designed to map the heavens. With the turn of a handle, it could predict the positions of the sun, the moon, and the planets, forecast solar and lunar eclipses, and even track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. It is a device so sophisticated that nothing approaching its complexity would appear again in the world for over 1,000 years. It rests now as a testament to a stream of knowledge that was diverted, a mechanical cosmos that charted the silent, patient dance of the stars. Greek fire was a terrifying and mysterious incendiary weapon wielded by the Byzantine Empire. For centuries, it was their guardian, a closely guarded state secret that helped protect Constantinople from siege after siege. Chronicles describe it as a liquid flame, projected from siphons mounted on ships that clung to wood and water alike, and was reported to keep burning even when doused with seawater. Its true composition remains one of history's enduring enigmas. Modern historians can only guess that it may have involved petroleum-like oils mixed with resins, sulfur, quicklime, or other volatile chemicals. Whatever the recipe, it was treated as state property, known only to a small circle of specialists. When the empire finally fell, that guarded formula disappeared with it. The fire that had once saved a city was extinguished not only on the sea, but in memory, leaving behind only stories of a weapon that burned with uncomfortably modern ferocity. The legendary swords of Damascus steel were renowned for their incredible sharpness and strength. When crusaders first encountered these blades in the Middle East, they returned with tales of weapons that could cleave a silk scarf floating in the air or cut through lesser European swords. Their secret lay in wood steel, a special crucible steel imported from India, which contained specific impurities that, when forged correctly, created a unique microscopic structure. This process, involving precise, low-temperature forging and slow cooling, formed bands of hard carbides and softer iron, giving the blades both their signature watery pattern and their hybrid properties. But by the 1700s, the specific Wootz ingots, or perhaps the exact forging technique, became unavailable. The knowledge was broken, and the art of creating these patterned, resilient blades slept, leaving metallurgists centuries later to try and reawaken the sleeping river in the steel. The concrete used by the ancient Romans has proven to be incredibly durable, lasting for millennia. We gaze at structures like the Pantheon in Rome, with its vast, unreinforced concrete dome, or the sturdy aqueducts that still stand, and we are looking at a material superior in longevity to our own modern cement. The secret was not just in their recipe, but in their environment. The Romans used a pozzolanic ash, a volcanic material abundant in their region, which they mixed with lime and seawater. This mixture sparked a unique chemical reaction. As salt water seeped into tiny cracks in the concrete over the centuries, it reacted with the volcanic ash to grow interlocking crystals, particularly a resilient mineral called tobermorite. In essence, the Roman concrete did not just endure, it actively healed itself, growing stronger as it aged. It is a quiet, geological patience, a stone that learned to mend its own wounds, whispering the empire's desire for eternity. The unmatched sound of a Stradivarius violin remains a beautiful mystery. Between the 17th and 18th centuries, Antonio Stradivari and other masters in Cremona, Italy, crafted instruments that are still considered the pinnacle of violin making. For centuries, artisans have tried to duplicate their tone, a combination of brilliance, depth, and resonance that seems to almost sing. While the quality of the wood, dense from a little ice age that caused slow growth, and the precise hand-carved shape are crucial, the greatest secret is believed to be sleeping in the varnish. Chemical analyses have revealed unusual ingredients, not just oils and resins, but perhaps mineral additives like borax or silica, and even insect repellents. It may be that the varnish was not just a protective coat, but a chemical treatment that sealed the wood and enhanced its acoustic properties. The true formula, however, was never written down, and the golden voice of that specific varnish has since fallen silent. Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was a dream of a world without wires. In the dawn of the 20th century, Tesla envisioned a global system not just for communication, but for the wireless transmission of electrical power itself. The Great Tower, rising over 180 feet, or about 55 meters, on Long Island, New York, was to be his prototype. It was not a simple radio antenna Tesla intended to use it to send energy through the Earth's own conductive layers and its ionosphere, creating a planet-wide resonance that could be tapped by anyone with a receiver. It was a vision of profound democratic abundance, a world where energy was as free as the air. But the dream was too large for its time. His investors, focused on the profits of wired communication, pulled their funding. The tower, a magnificent skeleton of that untethered future, was demolished, its promise of free global power dissolving before it could fully awaken. The true loss of the Library of Alexandria was not just the burning of scrolls, but the destruction of a collective consciousness. It was the intellectual heart of the ancient world, a place where the scrolls of philosophers, mathematicians, astronomers, and playwrights were gathered, copied, and studied. This was not a quiet archive. It was a vibrant, living institution, a think tank that held perhaps 500,000 documents. When it was lost, through a series of fires and conflicts over centuries, it was not just paper and ink that vanished. Entire branches of knowledge were severed. We lost detailed star charts, countless philosophical treatises, the full texts of plays we now know only by name, and the engineering knowledge of Hellenistic inventors. It was a catastrophic silencing of the past, a great repository of thought that was scattered to the winds, leaving us to forever wonder what wisdom the flames consumed. A heat-resistant material called starlight was introduced in the 1980s by an amateur British chemist named Maurice Ward. Working in his home workshop, he created a pale, putty-like coating that he said could shrug off intense heat. On television, he famously coated a raw egg in starlight and held it in the blue flame of a blowtorch. When the shell was cracked, the egg inside appeared uncooked. Aerospace agencies and companies were intrigued, and some small-scale tests suggested that the material really did offer extraordinary thermal protection. Ward, however, kept the formula entirely secret and refused to sell full rights to it, fearing loss of control. He died in 2011 without leaving a clear, publicly known recipe. The dramatic claims that starlight could withstand temperatures of thousands of degrees or a nuclear flash come from demonstrations and interviews rather than published, peer-reviewed data, so they remain unproven. What we are left with is the story of a material that might have been remarkable, wrapped in a mystery that died with its creator. The object known as the Baghdad Battery is a quiet, electrical puzzle from the ancient world. Discovered near modern Baghdad in the 1930s and usually dated to around 2,000 years ago, each device consists of a small terracotta jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. When replicas are filled with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar or grape juice, they can produce a small voltage, just enough to twitch the needle of a modern meter. What the original jars were actually used for, however, is unknown. No ancient text mentions them as batteries, and there is no direct evidence of electroplating workshops or medical devices tied to them. Ideas like healing currents or early electroplating remain attractive possibilities rather than established facts. The jars simply sit there in the museum, a tiny potential flicker of electricity held inside clay, hinting that someone once played with forces we are only guessing at. Ulfbert swords were Viking-age blades of such high quality, they baffled archaeologists for decades. Dating from the 9th to the 11th centuries, these swords, bearing the Ulfbert inscription, were a marvel of medieval metallurgy. They were forged from crucible steel, a metal with a high carbon content that was incredibly strong, flexible, and free of the impurities, or slag, that plagued most European ironwork of the time. This metal was thought to be unavailable in Europe, leading to theories that the steel was imported from Central Asia or the Middle East. Even more mysterious was the forging process itself, the precise heat and hammering needed to work this advanced material without it becoming brittle. These blades were a warrior's soul, a perfect balance of strength and flexibility. They represent a lost art, a forgotten fire, a mastery of steel that seems to have appeared and then vanished with the Viking trade routes. Mithridatium was the ancient world's dream of a universal antidote. It takes its name from Mithridates VI of Pontus, a king in the 1st century BCE who lived in constant fear of poison. Ancient writers describe him experimenting with venoms and remedies, even dosing himself in small amounts in an attempt to build resistance. Out of this obsession came a legendary mixture containing many different ingredients, herbs, spices, resins, and perhaps trace amounts of poisons, blended into a single daily dose. Roman physicians later adapted and elaborated on the recipe, turning it into a fashionable, almost magical remedy that was said to guard against many ills. The exact formulas changed over the centuries, and no single original version survives. Whether it truly offered broad protection, or mainly comforted those who could afford it, is something we can no longer test. What remains is the image of a king trying to bottle his fears, and of a medicine that promised one shield against every hidden threat. Archimedes' so-called heat ray sits halfway between legend and laboratory experiment. Later ancient writers, not Archimedes himself, tell a story from the Roman siege of Syracuse. The great inventor is said to have arranged polished shields or mirrors to concentrate the fierce Sicilian sunlight onto the wooden hulls of enemy ships, setting them ablaze before they could reach the walls. For a long time, this was treated as pure myth. Modern teams have tried to recreate the effect with arrays of mirrors. They have sometimes managed to char planks or briefly ignite small targets at close range, but doing so reliably against moving ships on the water would have been extremely difficult. Whether anything like this was actually deployed in battle is unknown. The real defensive stars of Syracuse were more conventional machines, such as catapults and cranes. The heat ray remains best understood as a story about the power of focused thought, a legend that imagines sunlight itself being bent into a weapon. The hydraulis, or water organ, was the voice of the ancient Hellenistic world. Invented by Ctesibius of Alexandria in the 3rd century BCE, it was the world's first keyboard instrument and a marvel of hydraulic engineering. Unlike later organs that use bellows, the hydraulis used the weight of water to create and maintain a steady, constant air pressure to feed its pipes. A hand pump would force air into a chamber submerged in water, and the water's natural resistance would smooth out the airflow. Allowing the organist to play, the sound was reportedly immense, capable of filling vast amphitheaters with a powerful, clear tone. It was the sound of technological triumph, a marriage of music and physics. It was a mechanical breath, born from water, that filled ancient halls with a music whose intricate mechanism was eventually forgotten, replaced by the simpler but less ingenious leather bellows. The story of vitrum flexile, or flexible glass, is one of Rome's most haunting technological legends. Writers such as Petronius and Pliny the Elder repeat a tale from the reign of Emperor Tiberius. An inventor presents a drinking bowl made of a mysterious new glass. He throws it to the ground, and instead of shattering, it merely dents. With a small hammer, he taps it back into shape. Fearing that such a material would cheapen gold and silver and upset the empire's economy, Tiberius is said to have asked whether anyone else knew the secret. When the inventor answered no, the emperor had him executed, and with him, the formula died. There is no archaeological trace of such glass, and most historians treat the story as a moral fable about envy, not a report of a real material. Still, it lingers as a little parable about an invention too perfect and too disruptive for its own time. Silphium was a golden flowered plant that grew only in a narrow coastal region of ancient Cyrene in modern-day Libya. To the ancient Mediterranean world, it was a miracle, valued more highly than silver. Its uses were seemingly endless. It was a delicious seasoning for food, a beautiful perfume, and most importantly, the most effective herbal contraceptive and medicine known to the classical world. It was so vital to the Cyrenian economy that its image was stamped onto their coins. But this incredible demand was its downfall. The Romans, who controlled its trade, failed to cultivate it, and the plant was harvested into oblivion. By the 1st century CE, Pliny the Elder reported that only a single stalk could be found. which was sent to the Emperor Nero as a curiosity. The plant that had supported an entire economy and a pillar of ancient medicine was loved to disappearance. Its potent secret returned to the earth. The Phaistos disc is a story written in a language we cannot read, using a method that should not have existed. This small, fired clay disc, unearthed in a Minoan palace on the island of Crete, dates back to the Bronze Age, nearly 4,000 years ago. What makes it a lost technology is not just the undeciphered script, but the way it was made. The symbols, arranged in a spiral, were not carved by hand. They were pressed into the soft clay using a set of individual stamps, one for each unique character. This makes the Phaistos disc the earliest known example of movable type, a concept of printing that would not be reinvented for millennia. It is a message locked in a circle, a narrative whose meaning waits patiently in the hardened clay, a silent testament to an isolated spark of printing genius. The first functional submarine was navigated in London, not in the Age of Steel, but in the Age of Shakespeare. In 1620, a Dutch inventor named Cornelis Drebbel demonstrated his human-powered submersible in the River Thames, performing for King James I and thousands of spectators. This remarkable vessel was a wooden frame covered in greased leather. Propelled by 12 oarsmen, it successfully submerged to a depth of about 15 feet, or 4.5 meters, and traveled underwater for several hours. The most advanced part of this lost technology was Drebbel's solution to the air. He had reportedly developed a chemical process, perhaps involving heating saltpeter, to release a quintessence or spirit of air, which we now know as oxygen, refreshing the cabin. The secret of his air supply was lost with him, and his wooden whale, breathing a secret air, dove into history long before its time. The Sakara bird is a small, curious artifact that blurs the line between a toy and a blueprint. Discovered in a tomb in Egypt and dating from around 200 BCE. This object is carved from sycamore wood, shaped like a bird in flight. However, it possesses features that are distinctly unbird-like and curiously modern. Its wings have the cross-section of an airfoil, a shape designed to create lift. Its tail is vertical, like the rudder of an airplane, rather than the horizontal stabilizer of a bird. These features have led some to speculate that it was not a simple toy, but a model glider, representing a sophisticated and lost understanding of the principles of aerodynamics. We do not know if it was just a child's toy, a simple weather vane, or a wooden soul dreaming of the sky. It rests now in the Cairo Museum, a silent aerodynamic riddle from the ancient world. The telharmonium was the ancestor of all electronic music, a colossus of wire and sound. Invented by Thaddeus Cahill in 1897, this was the first electromechanical synthesizer, and it was built on an industrial scale. The instrument was a behemoth, weighing over 200 tons, or about 181 metric tons, and filling an entire building in New York City. It did not create sound with pipes or strings, but with massive, rotating geared tone wheels that generated precise musical frequencies as electrical signals. This music, the sound of pure electricity, was then streamed out to homes and hotels over the telephone network. It was the world's first music streaming service, but the machine was too large, too expensive, and its powerful signal often bled into private phone calls. It was a giant, heavy ancestor, singing the first electric song to a world that was not quite ready to listen. The Delhi iron pillar stands as a quiet defiance of rust. This column, nearly 24 feet, or about 7 meters, tall, was erected in the 4th century CE and remains standing in India, largely uncorroded after 1,600 years of exposure to the elements. This longevity has baffled metallurgists, as iron from that era should have long since turned to dust. The secret to its endurance is a technology of composition. The ancient Indian ironsmiths who forged it created a metal that was high in phosphorus and lacking in sulfur and magnesium. This unique blend, through a process of slow atmospheric reaction, formed a thin protective film of passive rust over the entire surface. This film acts as a shield, a microscopically thin barrier that seals the iron underneath from the ravages of moisture and time. It is a pillar that learned to breathe its own armor, a testament to a forgotten mastery of metal. The Roman dodecahedron is a small hollow mystery cast in bronze. Hundreds of these objects have been found across the lands once held by the Roman Empire, from Wales to Hungary, all dating from the 2nd to 4th centuries CE. They share a precise design: 12 flat pentagonal faces with a circular hole of varying size in the center of each, and small knobs at every corner. Their great mystery is that not a single Roman text or document ever mentions them. Their purpose is completely lost. Theories abound, imagining them as surveying instruments, candle holders, or children's toys. Perhaps they were religious artifacts, or even a specialized tool for knitting gloves. But without a single written word, they remain as silent as the earth that held them. They are small, intricate questions left behind by an empire, a geometric riddle with no surviving answer. The Voynich manuscript is a book that refuses to be read. It is a medieval codex, carbon dated to the early 15th century, filled with page after page of an elegant, flowing script that matches no known language. Alongside this unreadable text are hundreds of intricate drawings of impossible things, fantastical plants that do not exist in nature, complex astronomical charts of unknown constellations, and strange biological diagrams. For a century, the world's greatest cryptographers and linguists have tried to break its code, and all have failed. It is a perfect cipher, a work of such profound and baffling complexity that we do not know if it is a lost language, an elaborate hoax, or a private, spiritual text. It guards its secrets perfectly, a gentle, illustrated mystery whose voice has been locked away from us. The mass production of the terracotta army was a marvel, but its true lost technology was its color. When the first warriors of this vast subterranean army were unearthed, they were not the simple grey figures we see today. They were painted in a brilliant, lifelike palette of purples, reds, greens, and blues. The lacquer used to bind these pigments to the clay was so sensitive that, upon contact with the dry air after 2 millennia underground, it would curl and flake away in mere minutes. Archaeologists watched as the vibrant uniforms of an emperor's ghost army vanished before their eyes. This lost art includes the creation of synthetic pigments like Han purple, a color that would not be rediscovered for centuries. We see the army, but we see only its shadow, a silent legion that lost its bright painted soul the moment it was brought back into the light. Wilhelm Reich's Cloudbuster was a machine built to touch the sky, but also one that now lives firmly in the realm of fringe science. In the mid-20th century, Reich, a controversial psychoanalyst, proposed the existence of a universal life energy he called orgone, which he believed influenced weather and health. His Cloudbuster was a frame of long metal tubes connected by hoses to flowing water. By pointing the tubes at different parts of the sky, he claimed he could draw orgone energy out of the atmosphere, breaking up stagnant clouds or encouraging rain. He even reported success during a drought in Maine. Modern science, however, has found no evidence for orgone energy, and Reich's weather claims have never been verified under controlled conditions. Meteorologists explain the events in ordinary atmospheric terms. The cloudbuster now stands more as a curious chapter in the history of ideas, a reminder of how the urge to heal the world can lead to elaborate machines built on a foundation of belief. The Library of Celsus in Ephesus was a tomb built to house a world of ideas, while the Library of Alexandria is more famous for its loss. This Roman marvel, built in the 2nd century CE, represented a different kind of lost technology. It was built to hold 12,000 scrolls and to honor the senator for whom it was named. Its ingenious, lost design was in its walls. The architects built a set of double walls, separated by a corridor of air. This passive ventilation system, an ancient form of climate control, protected the precious papyrus scrolls from the extremes of temperature and the damaging humidity of the coastal air. The library itself, a beautiful facade of scholarship, was eventually destroyed by an earthquake and fire, but its clever design, a building that breathed to protect the knowledge inside, was a forgotten innovation. The Viking sunstone was a navigator's secret for a sky that would not cooperate. The Norse sagas, the great stories of their voyages, speak of a Solarstein, a magical stone that could find the sun even on the most overcast or foggy days. For a long time, this was thought to be a myth, but it was likely a real and practical tool, a piece of a naturally polarizing crystal, such as cordierite or calcite, which were common in Scandinavia. By holding this crystal up to the grey sky and rotating it, a navigator could see a change in the light patterns. When the light passing through the stone was at its brightest, it revealed the hidden direction of the sun. It was a simple, elegant piece of physics, a slice of the earth that allowed a ship to find its way across a sunless sea. The art of Egyptian mummification was a 70-day journey between worlds. We understand the broad strokes of this ancient practice, the removal of organs and the use of natron salt to desiccate the body. But the true mastery, especially from the New Kingdom, is a lost chemical and ritual art. We do not know the precise, guarded formulas for the sacred anointing oils and resins, or the exact composition of the natron mixtures used for the finest preservations. The process was a perfect blend of science and prayer, a technology of the soul. Each step was a ritual, a spoken word that activated the chemical process. It was a profound understanding of decay and the knowledge required to halt it, to render a human form a timeless vessel, an eternal house for the spirit. The Aeolipile was a steam engine that spun in the ancient world. Over 1,000 years before the Industrial Revolution, an inventor named Hero of Alexandria described this remarkable device. It was a simple, hollow sphere mounted on an axle, with two small, bent nozzles pointing in opposite directions. When a fire heated a cauldron of water below, steam would travel up through the supports and into the sphere, finally jetting out of the nozzles. By the principle of rocket-like propulsion, this escaping steam would cause the sphere to spin at a high speed. It was the world's first steam turbine. But in the 1st century CE, it was seen not as a source of power, but as a wonder, a fascinating toy for temples. The engine was born, but the world was not ready for it, and the true potential of steam slept for another millennium. The Nebra sky disk is the oldest known portrait of the universe. This bronze disk, unearthed in Germany, is nearly 4,000 years old. It is about 12 inches or 30 centimeters, wide and inlaid with gold symbols, a crescent moon, a full moon or sun, and a cluster of stars identifiable as the Pleiades. It is not just art. It is a complex astronomical clock, a lost piece of Bronze Age technology. It was a calculator used to harmonize the solar and lunar calendars. By observing when the Pleiades appeared next to the moon, the disk's user would know when to insert a leap month to keep the seasons aligned, a crucial task for an agricultural society. The specific astronomical knowledge it represents, a precise and local understanding of the cosmos, was a wisdom that faded long before writing arrived to record it. The legend of ever-burning lamps tells of a light that seemed to conquer time. Ancient and medieval writers repeat stories of sealed tombs opened after hundreds of years, only to reveal a lamp still shining beside the dead. In some tales, it gutters out the moment. Fresh air rushes in. In others, it burns on until the onlookers, terrified, snuff it out. By the laws of physics as we understand them, such a lamp is impossible. No known fuel and wick could burn for centuries in a closed space. Historians now see these accounts as exaggerations, misunderstandings, or symbolic tales, rather than reports of real devices. Perhaps visitors found traces of simple oil lamps, or faint phosphorescent glows in damp stone, and the story grew in the retelling. What remains is the image itself, a stubborn flame in the dark, a metaphor for knowledge, memory, or the soul, imagined as something that refuses to go out. The rich purple silk of the Byzantine Empire was a technology of pure power. For centuries, Constantinople held the world's most guarded secrets, the art of sericulture, or silk farming, stolen from China by monks, but even more valuable was the creation of Tyrian purple, a dye that was worth more than its weight in gold. This imperial color was not from a plant. It was painstakingly extracted from the glands of thousands of murex sea snails, a single drop from each. The process was foul-smelling, but resulted in a color that was vibrant, light-fast, and a symbol of the emperor himself. When the empire was shattered, these complex, state-controlled industries collapsed. The precise knowledge of harvesting and processing the true imperial purple faded into a luxury that could no longer be made. The panjagan was an ancient Persian weapon of overwhelming firepower. Long before the advent of modern repeating rifles, the Sasanian Empire developed a repeating crossbow that could unleash a volley of arrows in seconds. This weapon, mentioned in historical texts, was a hand-cranked marvel of engineering. It likely featured a gravity-fed magazine on top that would drop a new bolt into place as the string was drawn back by a lever, allowing a single soldier to fire 5 bolts in rapid succession. It was a devastating advantage on the battlefield, a storm of wood and steel. But after the fall of the Sasanian dynasty, the knowledge of its construction, the precise mechanics of this rapid-fire weapon, was lost, and the technology vanished from the battlefield. Mayan blue is a pigment that has defeated the jungle for centuries. In the temples and murals of Mesoamerica, this vibrant, turquoise blue has survived humidity, sun, and rain, remaining brilliant while other colors have faded. Its resilience was a chemical mystery, a lost technology of color. Modern science has found its secret. It is not just a pigment, but a nano-composite material. The Mayan artisans took the organic dye from the indigo plant and fused it with a specific absorbent clay called paligosquite. By heating this mixture, they locked the dye molecules into the channels of the clay's crystal structure, creating a new hybrid substance. This fusion of the organic and the inorganic made a color that is almost indestructible, a blue that decided to live forever. The Lycurgus cup is a Roman chalice that holds a secret of two colors. This 4th century glass artifact, now in the British Museum, appears to be a gentle, opaque jade green when lit from the front, but when a light is shone from behind, it glows with a completely different, translucent, fiery red. This stunning effect is a lost technology known as dichroic glass Roman glassmakers, in a feat that we can now only replicate with modern nanotechnology, managed to impregnate the glass with microscopic particles of silver and gold, just 50 nanometers in diameter. The precise ratio and suspension of these particles determines how they scatter light, creating the cup's dual-colored soul. How they achieved this nanoscale control over materials is a mystery that glows green and red. The image on the Shroud of Turin remains a technological enigma. Whatever one believes about its origins, the image itself, a faint sepia-tone negative of a human form, possesses a unique set of physical characteristics that represent a lost process. The image is almost impossibly superficial, affecting only the very topmost microfibers of the linen, with no evidence of paint, dye, or scorching. It also contains three-dimensional information, encodable by modern imaging devices. For decades, scientists and artists have attempted to replicate all of these specific properties using known medieval or modern techniques, and none have fully succeeded. It is a photograph with no camera, a print without ink, an image that seems to have been formed by a subtle radiation or a chemical vapor, a method that has left no trace of itself. The perfect acoustics of ancient Greek theatres were a technology of open-air sound. At the great theatre of Epidaurus, built in the 4th century BCE, a spectator in the very back row, some 200 feet, or about 60 meters from the stage, can hear a coin dropped in the center. This clarity was not an accident. The lost tech is the architecture itself, specifically the material and shape of the limestone seats. The rows of stone steps act as a natural acoustic filter. They are a sound trap. They effectively suppress low G-frequency background noises, such as the murmur of the crowd or the wind, while reflecting and amplifying the high-frequency sounds of the human voice. The entire structure is a massive passive sound system, a stone instrument designed to carry the quietest whisper. The Nazca lines are a gallery of drawings meant for an audience in the sky. In the dry, windless desert of southern Peru, the Nazca people created hundreds of geoglyphs between 500 BCE and 500 CE. These giant figures, depicting hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys, and strange geometric shapes, were made by removing the dark, oxidized desert pebbles to reveal the lighter earth beneath. Some are over 1,200 feet, or 370 meters, long. The lost technology is one of scale and purpose. We do not know why they were made, but more pointedly, we do not know the system of mathematics and surveying that allowed a ground-based culture to create images of such perfect proportion. Images they themselves could never see in their entirety. They are a vast, silent message drawn on the earth. The legend of Atlantis has become the ultimate story of a civilization lost to the sea. Our earliest and main source is the philosopher Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE. In his dialogues, he describes a powerful island kingdom with impressive harbors, temples, and canals, which grows arrogant and is destroyed by earthquakes and floods in a single day and night. Most historians today see Atlantis not as a real place, but as a philosophical parable about hubris and the dangers of power. Later centuries, however, layered new fantasies onto the tale. Visions of forgotten machines, mysterious energies, and a harmony with nature that vanished beneath the waves. None of these more extravagant details appear in the ancient texts, and no archaeological site has been convincingly identified as Atlantis. Yet the story endures as a mirror for our own anxieties, that a brilliant, technically capable civilization can still be fragile, and that whole worlds of knowledge can slip under the water and be remembered only as a warning. The original formula for Coca-Cola is a lost flavor from a different century, while the modern recipe is one of the most guarded trade secrets in the world. The original 1886 formulation by John Pemberton is a truly lost technology. We know that it famously contained an extract of the coca leaf, giving it a small amount of cocaine, which was legal and common in medicines at the time. This was removed around 1903. But the other change is in the merchandise 7X, the secret blend of flavoring oils. The exact combination and sourcing of those original 19th century ingredients and the taste they produced is no longer the same. The very first sip of that new, invigorating tonic is a flavor that now exists only in memory, a taste of a world that has since dissolved. The original Strasbourg astronomical clock was a lost symphony of mechanics and theology, while the magnificent clock standing today in the Strasbourg Cathedral is a 19th century marvel. It is the third on that spot. The first, built in the 1350s, and its successor from the 1570s, were far more than timepieces. They were automata-filled micro-universes. The 16th century clock, a collaboration of mathematicians, astronomers, and artisans, displayed the true positions of the sun, moon, and planets on an astrolabe, a feat requiring an impossibly complex gear train. It had a celestial globe, a perpetual calendar, and a procession of figures, from a crowing rooster to the apostles parading before Christ. When parts of this clock failed over the centuries, the profound knowledge of its specific hand-cut gearing and astronomical calculations was lost. We can see the shell, but the original, intricate mechanical mind that powered its vision of the cosmos has fallen silent. A massive coral fortress in Florida, known as Coral Castle, was built by one man working in secret. Between 1923 and 1951, a Latvian immigrant named Edward Leeds-Kalnin single-handedly quarried, moved, and carved over 1,100 tons, or about 1 million kilograms, of oolitic limestone. Some of these stones are larger than those at Stonehenge, with the largest weighing an estimated 30 tons. He did this all at night, using only simple hand tools and with no modern machinery. He claimed to have rediscovered the techniques of the ancient pyramid builders, using perpetual motion and an understanding of magnetism. How he achieved these feats of leverage and balance alone remains a profound mystery. He was a small man, barely 5 feet, or 1.5 meters, tall. His methods, his lost secrets of weight and equilibrium, died with him, leaving behind a silent, impossible garden of stone. The legendary Japanese katana is born from a unique and nearly lost steel called tamahagane. Traditional Japanese swordsmiths did not have access to high-quality iron ore. The iron sand they used was full of impurities. To create a worthy blade, they developed the tatara, a massive clay furnace, where they would smelt this sand with charcoal for 3 days and nights. This process did not create uniform steel. It produced a bloom of metal with varying carbon content. The master smith would then painstakingly fold the harder, high-carbon steel thousands of times to hammer out impurities and distribute the carbon. This laminated folded metal, with a hard edge and a softer, more flexible spine, is what gave the katana its soul. This ancient, intuitive, and labor-intensive method of creating tamahagani steel is an art that almost vanished, a fire that few now know how to control. The ancient Chinese invented a seismoscope that could detect an earthquake's distant, unseen arrival. In 132 CE, the brilliant polymath Zhang Heng presented his creation to the Han Dynasty court. It was a magnificent bronze vessel, nearly 6 feet, or almost 2 meters across, encircled by 8 dragon heads, each holding a bronze ball in its mouth. Below each dragon sat a bronze toad with its mouth open. When an earthquake, even 100s of miles away, sent its tremors through the earth, a complex, secret mechanism inside the vessel would activate. A pendulum or lever system, sensitive to the correct vibration, would cause the dragon facing the direction of the quake to open its mouth and drop its ball into the toad's mouth below. The sound would alert the court. The precise, ingenious mechanism inside, a technology that could feel the earth's faint shudder, was lost to history. The original recipe for Worcestershire sauce was a culinary accident that became a lost formula. In the 1830s, 2 chemists, John Lee and William Perrins, were asked by a local nobleman to replicate a pungent fish-based sauce he had enjoyed in Bengal. Their initial attempt was a disaster. The smell was so overwhelmingly sharp and unpleasant that they abandoned the barrel of concoction in their cellar. They forgot about it for years. When they rediscovered the barrel during a cleaning, they found that time, fermentation, and patience had transformed the harsh liquid into the complex, savory, and mellow sauce we know today, while the modern company still produces the sauce. The original 19th century batch, born of failure and time, contained a specific alchemy of aged ingredients and bacterial magic that can never be precisely duplicated. It was a flavor born from being forgotten. The color known as Egyptian blue was the first synthetic pigment in human history. The desire for the precious blue of lapis lazuli was so strong that, as early as 2600 BCE, Egyptian artisans invented a way to create their own. This was a complex, lost technology, a true feat of high-temperature chemistry. They would take a precise mixture of silica from desert sand, lime, copper, and an alkali like natron, and heat it in a furnace to a temperature over 800 degrees Celsius or 1470 degrees Fahrenheit. The process, requiring exact temperatures and oxygen control, would fuse these ingredients into a brilliant, glassy blue. This pigment was incredibly stable, remaining vibrant for millennia. But the knowledge was fragile. With the fall of the Roman Empire, the specific high-heat furnace technology and the exact recipe were forgotten, and the secret to this perfect manufactured blue slept for thousands of years. Nikola Tesla's Teleforce weapon, often nicknamed the Death Ray, lived almost entirely on paper and in Tesla's vivid imagination. In the 1930s, long after his most productive years, he announced that he had designed a defensive system that could fire a narrow beam of tiny, charged metal particles at tremendous speed, powerful enough, he said, to tear down aircraft or stop armies hundreds of kilometers away. He described elaborate high-voltage equipment to accelerate and focus this stream, and offered to build the system for several governments as a way to make invasion impossible. No complete working prototype was ever demonstrated, and after his death, investigators found no finished blueprints that would allow engineers to reconstruct such a device. Modern physicists doubt that a beam weapon of the sort Tesla sketched could have worked as described with the technology of his time. Teleforce remains less a lost machine and more a late chapter in Tesla's life, a dramatic idea about a world where the threat of overwhelming force would, in theory, make war unthinkable. The stonework of Pumapunku in Bolivia is a puzzle of impossible precision. This site, part of the larger Tiwanaku civilization, features massive blocks of andesite and red sandstone cut with a neatness that seems to defy the tools of the ancient world. Some of these stones, weighing over 100 tons or 90 metric tons, are carved with perfectly straight edges, intricate inlays, and smooth, almost polished surfaces. The most baffling are the H-blocks, identical, complex shapes that suggest a form of modular construction or mass production. The andesite itself is a notoriously difficult, hard volcanic rock. How these builders, with no known written language or the wheel, achieved these near laser-like cuts and complex interlocking joints remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. The tools and the mathematical knowledge that allowed them to shape a mountain so perfectly have been utterly lost. The Romans did not invent chainmail, but they perfected it into a lost art of mass production. The legions of the Roman Republic and early empire were clad in lorica hamata, a shirt of interlocking iron rings. This was a technology borrowed from the Celts, but the Romans industrialized it. Each shirt was composed of tens of thousands of individual rings. Half were solid, punched from iron sheets, and the other half were riveted closed, one by hand. This created a flexible, resilient armor that could stop a cutting blade. The sheer scale of this production, the ability to outfit hundreds of thousands of soldiers with this complex, time-consuming armor, represents a lost logistical and manufacturing system. When the empire's centralized workshops collapsed, the specific, efficient knowledge of how to create this metal fabric on such a vast scale faded with them. The Cockno stone in Scotland is a vast, lost message from our Neolithic ancestors. This massive stone slab, roughly 43 by 26 feet, or 13 by 8 meters, is covered in hundreds of mysterious symbols known as cup and ring marks. These intricate spirals, grooves, and indentations were carved some 5,000 years ago, and they form the most complex set of such petroglyphs in all of Europe. We have no idea what they mean. They are a form of writing whose key is long gone. Are they a map of the surrounding settlements, a chart of the stars, a religious text, or a boundary marker? In 1965, to protect this profound, silent message from erosion and vandalism, archaeologists made the difficult decision to rebury the stone under tons of earth. It rests there now, a library of lost meaning, sleeping beneath the ground, its story waiting patiently. The first successful incubators for premature infants were a lost technology from the circus. In the late 19th century, infant mortality was tragically high. A French doctor, Stéphane Tarnier, developed a heated box for premature babies, but the medical establishment was skeptical. It was a man named Martin Cuny who became the technology's champion, but he did so at amusement parks like Coney Island. For decades, Cuny ran infant incubator exhibits at fairs and sideshows, charging spectators to see the tiny, fragile babies being cared for with this new science. This spectacle, though bizarre to us, was their only hope. He saved thousands of lives. But Cuny was not a doctor, and he kept his methods, especially the exact details of his life-saving machines, a secret when he died. His specific, practical knowledge of this frontier medicine largely disappeared. The daguerreotype was the first photograph, and its creation was a lost, toxic art. Invented by Louis Daguerre in the 1830s, this process created a hauntingly sharp, mirror-like image on a silver-plated copper sheet. But the technology was perilous. To make the plate sensitive to light, the photographer had to fume it in darkness, exposing it to the vapors of iodine and bromine. Then, after a long exposure in the camera, the invisible, latent image was developed using a truly dangerous lost technology, a bath of heated, toxic mercury vapor. This mercury cloud would selectively amalgamate with the exposed silver, conjuring the image from the plate. This delicate alchemical dance with poisonous fumes was a craft that required immense skill and nerve. It was quickly abandoned for safer methods, and the secret of drawing with mercury was gladly forgotten. The fire piston is an ancient technology that harnessed the power of air itself. This simple, brilliant device, found for centuries in Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, consists of a hollow cylinder and a piston with an airtight seal. When the piston is driven down into the cylinder with a single sharp blow, the air trapped inside is compressed so rapidly that its temperature instantaneously soars to over 500 degrees Fahrenheit, or 260 degrees Celsius. This is hot enough to ignite a piece of tinder placed in the piston's tip. It is a technology of physics, creating fire from nothing but pressure and speed. It is a cold fire tool. While its principle was later used in the diesel engine, this elegant, handheld method of fire starting, a way of striking a spark from the air, is a piece of ingenuity that was largely replaced by the simple match. The lighthouse of Alexandria was not just a tower, but a lost machine of light. One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, it stood for over 1,500 years, guiding ships into the busy harbor. It was a technological marvel, standing estimated at over 330 feet, or 100 meters tall. While its height was an engineering feat, its true lost technology was the mirror. At its peak, a massive curved mirror, said to be made of polished bronze or even a form of glass, was used to project the light from a great bonfire. By day, this mirror was said to reflect sunlight, visible from many miles away. By night, it focused the fire's light into a powerful, steady beam. The knowledge of how to forge and polish such an immense and perfect reflector, a mirror that could tame a bonfire into a beacon, was lost to the sea when the lighthouse finally fell. The quipu of the Inca Empire was a library made of thread. The Inca ruled a vast, complex empire, but they had no written language in the way we know it. Their primary technology for recording information was the quipu, an intricate assembly of knotted cords. These were not simple memory aids, they were sophisticated three-dimensional documents. Using different colors of string, various types of knots, and precise placement, the quipu makers could record everything from census data and tax collection to historical narratives and astronomical calculations. It was a tactile language, a mathematics of texture. When the Spanish Empire conquered the Inca, they suppressed the quipu, burning most of them. The quipucamayucs, the masters who could read and tie these knotted stories, vanished, and the key to this unique, woven language was lost, leaving us holding silent, tangled threads. The original Listerine was not a mouthwash, but a lost surgical tool. In 1879, Joseph Lister's theories of antiseptic surgery were just beginning to be accepted. A chemist named Joseph Lawrence created a powerful alcohol-based antiseptic formula named Listerine in his honor. It was not intended for dental hygiene. For years, its lost technology was its versatility. It was marketed as a miracle fluid, a potent germ killer for cleaning surgical wounds, washing floors, and even treating skin diseases. Its use as a halitosis cure, a mouthwash, was only pitched in the 1920s, a marketing move that became its sole identity. The original jack-of-all-trades surgical antiseptic, a fluid that was once the scent of a clean hospital and a sterile scalpel, is gone. Its potent, multi-purpose identity lost to its own success as a consumer product. The Whispering Gallery at St. Paul's Cathedral in London is an accidental marvel of acoustic engineering. High up in the dome, a stone walkway curves around the circumference, about 98 feet or 30 meters across. If one person whispers gently against the wall, a second person standing on the opposite side can hear their words with perfect clarity. This was not a planned feature. It is a lost technology born of geometry. The sound waves of the whisper do not travel directly across the open air. Instead, they cling to the smooth, curved surface of the wall, creeping along the stone in a series of continuous reflections. This effect, known as a whispering gallery wave, carries the sound with almost no loss of volume. It is a secret shared between the voice and the stone, an architectural curiosity that harnessed a physics its builders did not fully understand. The lost art of medieval illuminated manuscripts lies in their liquid light. The monks and artisans who created these painted books were not just scribes. They were alchemists of color. Their pigments were a lost technology, painstakingly ground from rare materials. Ultramarine blue, more valuable than gold, was crushed from lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Vibrant reds came from the Kermes insect, and glistening greens from toxic verdigris made by hanging copper over vinegar. But the true lost secret was the gilding, the application of gold leaf. They used a gesso made of slaked plaster and a binder, perhaps a fish glue, to create a raised bed. They would then breathe on this base to make it humid and tacky before laying the fragile gold. This is how they created a word that literally shone, a holy text that held its own light. The ancient Russian steel known as bulat was a sibling to Damascus steel, and its recipe is equally lost. This crucible steel, renowned in the medieval Eastern world, was known for its incredible strength, sharp edge, and the beautiful watery damask pattern on its surface. It was forged from ingots created in a sealed crucible, where iron and carbon were melted together, allowing a unique crystalline structure to form as it cooled. The Russian metallurgist Pavel Anosov famously recreated the process in the 19th century, producing blades of legendary quality. But his work was so secretive and his notes so encoded that after his death, the precise knowledge was lost once more. The secret of the bulat, a steel that held a flowing river in its grain, returned to its slumber, proving that a lost technology can be found and then lost all over again. The Colossus of Rhodes was a lost technology of hollow bronze casting on a monumental scale. This towering statue of the sun god Helios, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was said to stand guard over the harbour of Rhodes. It reached a height of roughly 110 feet, or about 33 meters, making it one of the tallest statues of its time. It was not carved, but built, its skin made of bronze plates secured to a massive internal framework of iron and stone. The true lost art was the engineering knowledge required to raise this structure in sections, to keep it stable against the sea winds and its own immense weight, and to cast or hammer such enormous bronze forms. It was an iron skeleton with a skin of captured sunlight. When an earthquake shattered the statue just 54 years after its completion, the great figure fell. Its pieces lay on the ground for centuries, a tourist attraction of a broken god. The knowledge of its specific construction, the secret of its stable, hollow heart, was not recorded, and it fell with him. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, if they existed as described, were a lost marvel of hydraulic engineering. These gardens are the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world whose existence is still debated. They were described by Greek historians as a mountain of paradise, a tiered ziggurat of terraces lush with trees and flowers, built in the flat, arid desert of Babylon. The true lost technology would not have been the structure, but its irrigation. How was water lifted hundreds of feet into the air to sustain a forest in the sky? Historians spoke of a chain pump, a sophisticated screw-like or bucket-based system that ran continuously, operated by laborers or animals hidden from view. This system would have been a complex, powerful machine, a hidden engine pumping the river's lifeblood up to the highest terrace, to cascade back down the gardens themselves, if they were real, have vanished, leaving not a trace. Their mechanical heart, the engineering that defied gravity, has dissolved back into the earth, leaving only the scent of a phantom oasis. The Mechanical Turk was a brilliant 18th century illusion that hid a lost technology of human ingenuity. In 1770, a showman named Wolfgang von Kempelen presented a life-sized automaton, a figure in Ottoman robes seated at a cabinet who could play chess, and it played to win, defeating challengers across Europe and America, including Napoleon Bonaparte and Benjamin Franklin. The world believed it was a true machine, a thinking automaton. The lost technology was not its clockwork, which was a sham, but the incredibly sophisticated system of concealment that hid a human chess master inside the cabinet was a masterpiece of forced perspective, sliding panels, and false compartments, allowing the hidden operator to shift and breathe while the mechanisms were inspected by the audience. The operator perceived the board via magnets and controlled the Turk's arm with a pantograph. It was a technology of misdirection, a grand piece of stage magic. The secret was kept for decades, a testament to an intricate mechanical lie that fooled a world longing for a machine that could think. The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio represents a lost ancient knowledge of astronomical surveying. This massive effigy, a winding serpent uncoiling for over 1,300 feet, or about 400 meters, is the largest animal mound in the world. It was built by ancient indigenous cultures of North America, though its exact creators are still debated. This is not just folk art. It is a piece of precise large-scale technology. The serpent's head is perfectly aligned with the setting sun on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. The coils and curves of its body also seem to mark the positions of the sun at the equinoxes and the winter solstice. This reveals a profound and lost understanding of geodesy, the science of measuring the earth, and the ability to lay out complex, curved geometry on a massive scale to mirror the silent, perfect geometry of the sky. It is a calendar written in earth, a ritual technology whose exact purpose has slithered into silence. The method of transporting the colossal Moai statues of Easter Island is a lost technology of leverage and balance. The Rapa Nui people carved over 900 of these iconic stone figures, some standing over 30 feet or 9 meters, tall and weighing up to 80 tons or 72 metric tons. They did this with no wheels, no draft animals, and no metal tools. The greatest mystery is how they moved these giants for miles, from the inland quarry to the coastal platforms where they stand. Modern experiments suggest the lost technology was a walking method. By attaching ropes to the statue's head and using a rocking, shuffling motion, a relatively small team could make the statue walk upright, rocking from one edge of its heavy, angled base to the other. This ingenious patient system of collaborative effort and simple physics allowed them to populate their island with stone guardians. It was a technology of community and belief, a secret of motion that was lost when their civilization fell. Centuries before Archimedes, ancient Chinese texts describe a lost technology of yang sui, or sun mirrors, used to focus fire. The concept of a burning mirror is ancient, but the Zhou writes, a classic text from before the 2nd century BCE, gives specific instructions on their use. It was not just a myth, but a standardized ritual tool. These were not weapons, but tools for a sacred purpose, to create pure fire, untainted by mundane friction, for use in rituals and sacrifices. The lost technology was the precise metallurgical art of casting and polishing a bronze parabolic mirror to a perfect, flawless curve. This curve was a piece of solid geometry, designed to catch the sun's parallel rays and focus them all onto a single, intensely hot point. It was a technology for communing with the heavens, a tool that allowed a priest to borrow a piece of the sun. The exact craft of their perfect focus, the mathematics of their curve, has faded. The first recorded attempt at controlled flight was a lost technology of feathers and physics in 9th century Spain. In the year 875, in Córdoba, an Andalusian inventor named Abbas ibn Firnas decided he would fly. He was a polymath, known for his work in glassmaking and water clocks. This was not a simple jump. He constructed a set of wings, a true ornithopter, a wooden frame covered in silk and adorned with the feathers of eagles. He had studied the flight of birds and built a technology to mimic it. He launched himself from a high tower, and by all accounts, he did not just fall, he glided. He remained airborne for some time, perhaps 10 minutes, before attempting a landing that he badly misjudged, injuring his back. He famously realized he had forgotten a tail, the technology for stability and landing. His work was not followed up on, and his brief, feathered flight, a moment of human soaring, became a forgotten footnote for 1,000 years. The hauntingly realistic Fayum mummy portraits from Roman Egypt were created with a lost technology of pigmented wax. These portraits, painted on wooden panels and placed over the faces of mummies, are almost 2,000 years old, yet they stare back at us with a freshness, depth, and psychological realism that seems utterly modern. Their secret is in caustic painting, a lost art. The artists use pure ground pigments, but instead of mixing them with oil or egg, they suspended them in hot, molten beeswax. This wax paint had to be applied quickly, with brushes and hot metal tools, before it cooled and hardened. This difficult, fast, and dangerous process created images with a unique, luminous depth. The wax itself, a translucent medium, entombs the pigment, protecting it from the air. This is why the colors have not faded. It is a technology that seals light and life inside a waxy, timeless amber, allowing the eyes of the past to meet ours. The Telesterion at Eleusis was a hall designed to house a lost technology of profound psychological transformation. For 2,000 years, the ancient Greeks celebrated the Eleusinian mysteries, the most sacred and secret religious rites of their world. At the heart of this was the Telesterion, the Hall of Initiation, a massive, dark, column-filled room. We do not know what happened inside. To speak of it was punishable by death, but it was a lost technology of experience. It was a carefully orchestrated piece of immersive theatre. It involved fasting, sensory deprivation in the darkness, and then a sudden, overwhelming flood of light. It involved the viewing of sacred objects and a dramatic narrative. Many also believe it involved the kykeon, a psychoactive drink. This combination of architecture, pharmacology, and storytelling was a machine for inducing a vision, a spiritual rebirth. When the rites were banned, the machine was broken, and its ability to conjure awe was lost. The sharpest blades of the ancient world were a lost technology not of metal, but of volcanic glass. The civilizations of Mesoamerica, like the Maya and the Aztec, built empires without the use of hard metals like iron or steel. For their most important tools and weapons, they turned to a different material, obsidian. This volcanic glass is brittle, but it holds an edge of astonishing molecular sharpness. The lost technology was pressure flaking. A master craftsman could strike a core of obsidian to create a long, prismatic blade, and then, using a deer antler or a piece of hardwood, apply precise pressure to flake off tiny pieces. This technique created an edge just a few molecules thick, far sharper than a modern steel scalpel. These blades, which could perform delicate surgeries or be set into clubs as the terrifying mak or huitl, were a technology of focused fracture. It was a craft of knowing exactly how and where the stone wished to break. The horses of St. Mark's in Venice are the remnants of a lost Roman technology for casting monumental bronze. These 4 magnificent, life-size bronze horses, now in Venice, were long believed to be Greek, but are in fact Roman, likely from the 2nd century CE. They are a technological marvel, the only surviving quadriga, or 4-horse chariot team. From classical antiquity, the lost art is their composition. They are not pure bronze. Analysis shows they are 98% copper, an alloy that is incredibly difficult to cast at this scale, as it cools too quickly and traps gas bubbles. Furthermore, they were cast in many pieces and then seamlessly joined together. They were also fire-gilded, a lost and perilous technique where a mercury gold amalgam was painted on, and the mercury then burned off, leaving a pure gold skin. They are a testament to a Roman foundry that had mastered a difficult impure metal and a toxic, beautiful gilding, a knowledge of form and fire that has since been lost. The Olmec civilization of Mesoamerica may have invented the magnetic compass over a millennium before the Chinese. The Olmec, the earliest major civilization in Mexico, flourished around 1200 BCE. They are known for their colossal stone heads and sophisticated culture. In the 1970s, an archaeologist discovered a small, polished bar of hematite, a form of iron ore, at an Olmec site. It was perfectly shaped and grooved. He noticed that when he floated this bar on a liquid, like water, it would consistently align itself to the same point, just west of magnetic north. This object, a simple, grooved piece of magnetic stone, was likely a geomancer's tool, a technology for aligning their tombs and cities with the Earth's unseen forces. It was a small stone that had learned to listen to the planet's magnetic soul, a secret of navigation that would be rediscovered worlds away centuries later. Roman Mithraeums, or temples to the god Mithras, were a lost technology of architectural acoustics. The cult of Mithras was a mystery religion popular with Roman soldiers. Their rituals were held in secret, in small, underground, cave-like temples built to be dark and intimate. Recent research suggests these temples were acoustic technologies built to manipulate sound. The small, vaulted, rough-surfaced rooms were perfect echo chambers. They were designed to amplify the sounds of the ritual, making whispers seem to come from everywhere, and making a priest's chant sound otherworldly and immense. Some even had sound effects niches, where hidden initiates could create the sounds of thunder or the cries of animals. It was a technology of spiritual immersion, an architecture that tricked the ear to convince the soul. The small dark room was an instrument, played by the priest to conjure the divine. The sun dagger of Chaco Canyon was a lost celestial calendar made of light and stone. On a high butte in New Mexico, the ancient Anasazi people, the ancestors of the Pueblo, created a simple, powerful observatory. They did not build a structure. They used the natural world. 3 massive stone slabs were, at some point, leaned against a cliff face, creating a small, dark space. Behind them, on the cliff, 2 spiral petroglyphs were carved. This was the lost technology. It was a machine that only worked on the solstices and equinoxes. On the summer solstice, as the sun passed its peak, a single pure dagger of light would pierce the opening and pass directly through the heart of the larger spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers would frame it. This precise interplay of rock, light, and carving was a perfect, silent clock. It was a knowledge of the sun's journey, so profound it required no moving parts, only patience and a deep understanding of shadow. The Codex Gigas, or Devil's Bible, represents a lost technology of superhuman monastic scribal work. This is the largest surviving medieval manuscript in the world. It is over 3 feet, or 90 centimeters, long, weighs 165 pounds, or 75 kilograms, and contains the entire Bible as well as other historical texts. Analysis of the script shows it was written by a single scribe. The uniformity of the writing is astonishing, showing no signs of aging, fatigue, or mood change over the hundreds of pages. Legend says a 13th century monk, to atone for a sin, promised to create it in one night and sold his soul to the devil for help. The lost technology is the physical and mental discipline. It is estimated to have required at least 5 years of non-stop solitary writing. It is a monument to a lost human focus, a level of patient, flawless, singular dedication that seems impossible in our modern world. The lost metal of orichalcum, described by Plato as the skin of Atlantis, was a real and now lost alloy. In his tale of Atlantis, the philosopher Plato described a magnificent, red glowing metal, second only to gold in value. It was called orichalcum, and it was said to cover the walls of the temple to Poseidon. For centuries, this was thought to be a fantasy. But in 2015, marine archaeologists found ingots of this lost metal in a 2,600-year-old shipwreck off the coast of Sicily. Chemical analysis showed it was a lost technology, a sophisticated brass-like alloy. It was made by cementing copper and zinc ore with charcoal in a high-temperature furnace, a complex process that would not be rediscovered for centuries. The metal that was once a myth, the shining, ruddy skin of a phantom city, was a real and difficult achievement of ancient metallurgy, a secret that sank to the bottom of the sea. The Roman gladius, or short sword, was not just a simple iron blade, but a product of a lost practical steel-making art. While not as glamorous as Damascus or Ulfbert steel, the Roman legionary sword was a ruthlessly effective and mass-produced weapon. It was designed for stabbing in the brutal chaos of close-quarters combat. The lost technology was a form of case hardening, a practical, rough-and-ready method of creating a steel edge on an iron sword. The smith would forge the blade from softer, cheaper iron. Then, he would pack the blade in carbon-rich material, like leather scraps and bone, and reheat it in the forge. This would cause the outer edges of the blade to absorb carbon, creating a case of high carbon steel around a soft, flexible iron core. It was not a perfect technology, but it was a fast, cheap, and brilliant solution. It gave the Empire's legions a weapon with a hard edge and a durable heart. The Piri race map of 1513 is a remarkable window into how early modern sailors saw the world, but it has also attracted some very speculative stories drawn by the Ottoman Admiral Piri race on gazelle skin. It shows the Atlantic coasts of Europe and Africa and the newly encountered shores of the Americas, with striking accuracy. For its time, Piri race himself wrote that he compiled it from about 20 older charts, including Arab and possibly classical sources. In the 20th century, some writers claimed that a curved landmass at the bottom of the surviving fragment must be an ice-free Antarctica, implying access to some forgotten prehistoric survey. Professional historians and cartographers strongly disagree. They see it as a distorted attempt to continue the coastline of South America, drawn with the normal errors of the age, not proof of a lost global map. The real wonder of the chart is not hidden continents, but how far sailors' knowledge had already spread by the early 1500s, stitched together from many voyages into a single restless coastline. Before ether, one of the first surgical anesthetics was a lost, inhaled gas called telluric effluvium. In the 1790s, long before the famous ether dome demonstration, the English physician Thomas Beddoes and his assistant, Humphrey Davy, were searching for a way to relieve pain. They focused on factitious airs or synthetic gases, while Davy would become famous for discovering the euphoric effects of nitrous oxide or laughing gas. Their first focus was a different, lost technology. They experimented with inhaling diethyl ether, which they called a telluric effluvium. They noted its ability to induce a calm, faint state and its power to relieve pain. But they abandoned this line of inquiry, focusing on nitrous oxide instead. The knowledge of ether's profound anesthetic power, the key to painless surgery, was found, held, and then, for 40 crucial years, lost again, a faint memory in a forgotten journal. The lost technology of Greek fire was not just naval, but was also deployed in early handheld grenades. While the ship-mounted siphons are the most famous use of this Byzantine superweapon, archaeologists have found a more personal, lost technology. In excavations, particularly in the lands of the Crusades, small, fist-sized, spherical clay pots have been found. These spherocones were once a mystery, but are now believed to be the world's first grenades. They were filled with the secret liquid Greek fire formula. A soldier could light a fuse and hurl this pot at the enemy, where it would shatter, spreading the sticky, unquenchable fire. This was a technology that miniaturized the Empire's greatest secret, placing a terrible, burning power into the palm of a single soldier. The secret of the liquid inside these small clay shells has been just as thoroughly lost as that of its larger naval counterpart. The Crystal Palace was a lost technology of prefabricated, modular architecture that vanished in fire. For the Great Exhibition of 1851 in London, Joseph Paxton, a gardener and not a traditional architect, designed a revolutionary structure. It was a colossal building, over 1,800 feet, or 550 meters, long, made almost entirely of cast iron and glass. Its true lost technology was its conception and speed. It was the world's first great prefabricated building. All its components, from the iron girders to the 300,000 panes of glass, were mass-produced in factories and then simply bolted together on site. This modular system allowed it to be erected in just 8 months. It was a cathedral of light, a transparent palace. After the exhibition, it was moved and re-erected, but in 1936, it was completely destroyed by a fire. The building itself, a blueprint for a new, fast, and light-filled architecture, was a promise that was not fully embraced again for a century. The original recipe for Roman garum was a lost technology of culinary alchemy. In the Roman Empire, this fermented fish sauce was the ultimate condiment. As ubiquitous and prized as ketchup or soy sauce is today, it was a luxury, but also a staple. The lost technology was its precise, slow fermentation. It was not simply rotted fish. It was a careful process where whole fish, particularly mackerel and anchovies, were layered with immense quantities of salt in large clay vats. These vats were left in the sun for months. The salt drew out the moisture and prevented putrefaction, while the fish's own natural enzymes, in a process called autolysis, would slowly, cleanly, and safely liquefy the entire mixture. The resulting amber liquid was a umami flavor of incredible depth. With the fall of the empire and the disruption of the complex salt trade and coastal factories, the exact, slow, and pungent art of creating true high-grade garum was lost. The mechanism of the ancient Chinese south-pointing chariot was a lost technology of pure non-magnetic direction. This was a complex two-wheeled cart, first described around the 3rd century CE, that had a special figure, an emperor mounted on top, with one arm always extended. No matter which way the chariot turned, the figure's arm would mechanically adjust to always point to the south. It was not a magnetic compass. It was a complex, lost technology of differential gearing. A set of gears linked the chariot's two wheels to the figure on top. As long as the chariot moved in a straight line, the figure was still. But the moment the chariot turned, one wheel would travel slightly farther than the other. This difference in rotation would engage the gears, which would precisely and automatically rotate the figure the exact opposite amount, keeping its arm locked on its original southern direction. The blueprints for this intricate, non-magnetic mind were lost for centuries. The Maltese cart ruts are a lost technology of transportation, a mystery carved in stone. Across the islands of Malta and Gozo, the limestone bedrock is crisscrossed by hundreds of parallel tracks, or ruts, running for miles, sometimes even plunging off cliffs or continuing underwater. These are not natural formations. They are ancient, man-made grooves, a lost technology of transport from the Bronze Age. They are pairs of tracks, about 4.5 feet, or 1.4 meters apart, and can be as deep as 2 feet, or 60 centimeters. We do not know what created them. Were they guides for a cart that was dragged, its runners wearing down the stone? Or were they a true rail system, a track for a wheeled vehicle? We have not found. Their purpose is as mysterious as their method. They are a silent, sprawling network, a testament to an ancient system of movement whose vehicle, cargo, and destination are all completely lost to time. The lost water clocks of the ancient world were not simple drips, but complex, automated astronomical machines. The clepsydra began as a simple bowl that dripped, but in the hands of inventors like Ctesibius of Alexandria, it evolved into a lost technology of wonder. The most advanced water clocks were masterpieces of automata. They did not just mark the hour, they had gears and racks and siphons. A steady, regulated flow of water would fill a chamber, raising a float. This float, in turn, would move a rack gear, which would turn a pointer on a dial, or, in the most elaborate examples, rotate a cylinder painted with the heavens. They had automated figures that would strike bells, mechanical birds that would sing, and systems that automatically reset themselves. They were the first true clocks, a marriage of astronomy and hydraulics. The complex knowledge of their gearing and water-powered automata was a line of thought that was broken and later reinvented with weights and pendulums. The parchment of the ancient world was a lost technology that replaced an entire plant. For millennia, papyrus, a reed from Egypt, was the paper of the Mediterranean, but when Egypt restricted its export, a new lost technology was perfected in the city of Pergamon. This was parchment, a material not woven from plants, but made from the skin of animals like sheep or goats. The process was a masterpiece of lost craft. The skin was not tanned like leather. It was soaked in lime, scraped clean of hair and fat, and then stretched taut on a wooden frame. As it dried under tension, the skin's very structure reorganized, becoming thin, durable, and white. This vellum was a perfect, smooth, and incredibly tough surface for writing, a technology that would carry the knowledge of the Middle Ages, the precise, non-chemical, tension-based method of creating a perfect, paper-like sheet from a raw hide is an art that has been replaced by industry. The camera obscura was a lost technology that existed for 1,000 years before photography. The principle is simple. Light passing through a tiny hole into a dark room will project a perfect but inverted image of the outside world onto the opposite wall. This dark room was the first camera. While known to ancient philosophers, its use as a lost technology was perfected by Renaissance artists. They are believed to have built room-sized and, later, portable box versions of the camera obscura. They would not just observe the image, but trace it. The stunning photographic realism of painters like Vermeer or Caravaggio, their perfect grasp of light and perspective, may be a product of this lost tool. It was a secret, a tool of drawing with light that allowed them to capture a scene with a realism that seemed almost magical. It was a technology of seeing, a lens on the world before the invention of the lens. The Holmegard bows are the oldest, most perfect archery technology, a lost secret of the Stone Age. Discovered in a peat bog in Denmark, these bows, carved from single pieces of elm, are nearly 9,000 years old. They are not crude, simple stick bows. They are a highly sophisticated, lost design. They have wide, flat limbs that are incredibly efficient, meaning they transfer a huge amount of their stored energy to the arrow, not to the handshock of the archer. The center, the handle, is rigid, while the limbs do all the work. This design, with its deep V cut for the arrow, is so advanced that modern bow makers who have replicated it are stunned by its speed, stability, and smoothness. This was a lost technology of the Mesolithic, a perfect understanding of wood, tension, and physics. It was a weapon and a tool that was forgotten, and then reinvented, piece by piece, over the next 9 millennia. The original Geiger counter, the first spark counter of 1908, was a lost technology of extreme sensitivity. When we think of a Geiger counter, we think of the clicking 1928 tube version, but the original, invented by Hans Geiger, was a different machine. It was built to count the alpha particles, the soul of the radium atom. It was a brass cylinder filled with a low-pressure gas, with a single fine wire running down its center, charged with a high breakdown voltage. It was a lost technology of balance, set on an electrical knife edge. The moment a single alpha particle, a single fragment of an atom, entered the chamber, it would ionize the gas, causing a massive spark to jump from the wire to the wall. This spark was the detection. It was a binary machine, a technology that turned the invisible atomic world into a visible, audible electric event. This first, crude, but incredibly sensitive spark method was quickly abandoned for the more stable tube. The lost Kiribalistra was the Roman Empire's high-tech spring-loaded artillery. We often think of torsion-powered catapults, which used twisted ropes of animal sinew, but the Kiribalistra, the hand ballista, developed in the late 1st century CE, was a lost technology of metal. It was a smaller, more portable scorpion, but its power source was not rope. Its secret was a lost technology of spring steel. It was powered by 2 bronze springs, inverted, U-shaped metal plates, which were cranked back and held under tension. When released, these metal springs would snap back, launching a bolt with terrifying speed and accuracy. This was a lost technology of metallurgy, the ability to forge a bronze alloy that could bend and flex and return to its shape without shattering. A cold power source that was more reliable and weatherproof than the hot, organic sinew of its ancestors. The secret of this springy metal was lost. The mithril of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, a metal as light as a feather and as hard as dragon scales, has a real-world, lost technology counterpart: titanium alloys in the Soviet Union. In the 1960s, at the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union had a near monopoly on refined titanium, a wonder metal that was light, strong, and heat-resistant. They developed lost technologies of welding and forging it that the West could not match. The most famous example was the Alpha-class submarine. Its entire hull was made of a special titanium alloy, allowing it to dive deeper, move faster, and most importantly, run quieter than any submarine on Earth. It was a lost technology of the deep. It was so fast and so deep, it was considered invulnerable to NATO torpedoes. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the massive, state-funded infrastructure that produced these high-grade, mythical titanium hulls was broken, and the Alpha class, a submarine as light and strong as fantasy, was lost. The orrery, a mechanical clockwork model of the solar system, was a lost technology of popular, tangible science. In the 18th century, these devices were the virtual reality of their day. They were not just scientific tools, but works of art, magnificent, complex machines of brass and gears. By turning a crank, a demonstrator could set the solar system in motion. Tiny, bead-like planets, often on long, delicate arms, would begin to orbit a central brass sun. They would spin at their correct relative speeds. The moon would orbit the Earth. This was a lost technology of education. It made the Copernican revolution real. It took the abstract, terrifying, mathematical void of the new astronomy and made it into a beautiful, tangible, and predictable toy. It was a technology that let you hold the entire clockwork cosmos in your hand. The ancient city of Nan Madol in Micronesia is a lost technology of building on water. On the remote island of Pompeii, this vast ruined city is built in a lagoon, on top of 100 artificial islets. It is a Venice of the Pacific. But the lost technology is its construction. It is built from colossal log-like pillars of basalt, a heavy volcanic rock. Some of these logs are 25 feet, or 7.6 meters, long and weigh up to 50 tons, or 45 metric tons. The Pohnpians, with no known technology of levers, pulleys, or wheels, quarried these massive pillars and then transported them, it is believed, on rafts, and then stacked them, login style, to build the walls of their city. The lost technology is the sheer logistical and social machine that made this possible. How did they move and lift these hundreds of thousands of basalt logs? The oral history says they were flown by magic. The engineering truth, a technology of massive communal effort, has been lost to the sea. The Chata Bulga, or Bulgarian umbrella, of the 1970s was a lost technology of silent assassination. This was not a myth, but a real lost technology of the Cold War. In 1978, a Bulgarian dissident, Georgy Markov, was walking in London when he felt a sharp sting in his leg. He looked, and a man was fumbling with an umbrella. Markov died 4 days later. The lost technology was the umbrella itself. It was a gas-powered pneumatic gun, cleverly disguised. It used a tiny burst of compressed air to fire a minuscule pinhead-sized pellet into his leg. The lost technology was the pellet itself, which was drilled with 2 microscopic X-shaped holes. It was designed to hold a tiny, fatal dose of ricin. The pellet was made of a lost platinum iridium alloy, and the X holes were coated in a lost wax, designed to melt at body temperature. It was a near-perfect, traceless weapon, a technology of death as subtle as a whisper. The so-called Dendera light is a modern nickname for a carving in the temple of Hathor at Dendera that, to contemporary eyes, looks surprisingly like a giant light bulb. In the relief, a priest holds an elongated oval shape with a serpent inside it, connected by a cable-like form to a pillar-shaped object. Some people have suggested this shows an ancient electrical lamp, evidence of a lost technology of illumination. Egyptologists, however, interpret the scene very differently. The image is part of a well-known religious motif. The serpent represents a creative, divine force emerging from a lotus, and the pillar is the Djed, a symbol of stability associated with the god Osiris. There is no archaeological evidence of electrical lighting in ancient Egypt. The resemblance to a light bulb is a coincidence born from our modern viewpoint, a case where ancient symbolism happens to look uncannily like modern hardware. The Greiler or Styrian scythes of Austria were a lost technology of super steel farming. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the scythes made in the Styria region of Austria were famous. They were a lost technology of metallurgy. They were not just iron. They were a laminated blade, a sandwich of metals. The core of the scyther was a lost form of high carbon, blister steel, which was hard but brittle. The outer layers were soft, pliable iron. This lost technology of forge welding, the 3 layers together, created a perfect tool. The hard steel core could be peened or hammered to a paper-thin, razor-sharp edge. The soft iron jacket gave the blade the flex and strength to absorb the shock of cutting. It was a lost art of knowing, by color, sound, and touch, exactly how to fuse these opposite metals into a single, unified singing blade. The Chokutien fossils, the first Peking man fossils, were a lost technology of understanding our own past, and they were lost in a moment of war. In the 1920s and 30s, in a cave near Beijing, scientists unearthed a treasure of Homo erectus fossils. These were not just bones, they were a lost technology. a Rosetta Stone for human evolution. They were the key to understanding our ancestors. But in 1941, as the Japanese army advanced on Beijing, the lost fossils were packed into 2 wooden crates to be shipped to safety in America. They were entrusted to a group of US Marines. And then, in the chaos of the Pearl Harbor attack and the fog of war, the crates vanished. They were lost completely. We lost the original data. We lost the technology of our own origin story. We are left now only with the copies, the casts, and the memory of a lost ancestor. The Flemish method of the 15th century old masters like Jan van Eyck was a lost technology of oil painting. His paintings, like the Arnolfini portrait, have a jewel-like brilliance, a luminous depth that painters have tried to copy for centuries. The lost technology was his medium, his oil. He did not just use raw linseed oil. He lost the recipe. It is believed he cooked his oil, perhaps with litharge, a lead oxide, or glass, lead glass, to make it dry faster. He then built his paintings in layers. He would underpaint in a monochrome, a single color, and then glaze over it with thin, transparent layers of pigment in oil. The light would not just reflect off the surface. It would penetrate the glazes, bounce off the underpainting, and glow from within. It was a lost technology of trapping light in paint. The karakuri mechanical dolls of Edo period Japan were a lost technology of entertainment and automation. In the 17th to 19th centuries, Japanese clockmakers created these magical wooden robots. They were not crude toys. They were a lost technology of clockwork and cam systems. The most famous was the tea-serving doll. When a host placed a cup of tea in its hands, it would walk forward a set distance, bow its head, and offer the tea to the guest. When the guest took the cup, the doll would stop. When the empty cup was returned, the doll turned around and walked back. This lost technology was not electric. It was powered by a spring, whalebone, and programmed by a set of wooden cams and levers. It was a lost ancestor of robotics, a machine that lived to serve. The Tsar tank was a lost technology of giant warfare, a failed dream from World War I. In 1914, Russia built this monster. It was not a tank in our modern sense. It was a lost technology of scale. It was a giant tricycle of war. It had 2 massive front wheels, nearly 30 feet or 9 meters high. It had a small rear wheel. A turret with cannons was slung between the giant wheels. It was designed to roll over trenches and barbed wire. It was powered by 2 Maybach engines, but in its first test, this lost technology failed. The small rear wheel got stuck in a ditch. The giant front wheels did not have enough power to pull it out. The Tsar tank, this iron behemoth, was stuck in the forest, abandoned. It rusted there for years, a lost monument to a giant, failed idea. And so, our journey through the wondrous world of lost technologies comes to a gentle close. Our exploration of the forgotten world of lost technologies is now complete. We have walked through the quiet ruins of genius, from clockwork computers in the sea to concrete that heals itself. We have listened for the echo of steam engines born before their time and tried to read the silent, locked messages left in stone, in thread, and in the very colors of the past. These inventions are not failures. They are the quiet, dusty archives of the human imagination. They are a testament to minds that dreamed of flying, of hearing across distances, and of touching the stars, leaving behind only a whisper of their tools, a blueprint of a dream. These stories are a soft reminder that knowledge is not a solid, unbreakable line, but a river that can change its course, with some streams vanishing into the earth, only to rest in silence. The ingenuity that forged a perfect blade or painted with light and wax is the same spark that rests within us now. The workshops are quiet, the furnaces are cold, but the awe of their creation remains. These tales of lost arts and vanished sciences are now a gentle lullaby, a soft, wondrous history to hold as you drift. If you happen to still be awake, that's perfectly all right. You can simply lie back, let the music keep flowing in the background, and drift in and out of the story at your own pace. But if your eyes are heavy, let the stories of lost technologies and the gentle music carry you softly into rest. Sleep well. Good night.